Good evening, everyone. This is Skinny E Media here to present you yet another podcast with my mate Bobatron or Rob Bavister, as we're going to talk about
Hey, hey.
Disney. Hey. Well, I know in my experience in my lifetime, Disney's always been a little bit of an unusual beast of its own. Either they've had films at the U level that have been too violent or too scary for its intended audience, or somehow too mild for its intended PG rating. And sometimes they've even
Frozen.
experimented with some 12s here and there. Start with Pirates of the Caribbean, now it's just pretty much commonplace. Look at all the Marvel movies and Star Wars that they do.
That's true. That is true. I mean, well, all the Star Wars since Revenge of the Sith have been 12A. I know Revenge of the Sith wasn't Disney, but still. I mean, Attack of the Clones was almost 12, but they'd have it. But it was cut to get a PG. A headbutt was removed because they had a big issue at a BBFC with imitable actions back then. Not so much now. I think the thing's uncut now at PG, but I don't know. But but then again, for blockbusters, 12A/ PG-13 is the moneymaker, and if it gets stamped with a PG rating, people are going to think it's a bit lame. So yeah, 12A/ PG-13 it is for those sort of movies.
That unfortunately is the case. It used to be back in the day. We both remember this a little bit more for you because you're a bit older than me. When PG used to be the de facto rating for big blockbusters like Jurassic Park, Men in Black, and The Mask and whatnot. I remember those days when PG films were quite hard edged.
Well, you'd be old
vanilla.
If you want to talk about Disney films, one I can mention is Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Because that was a U rated over there, but PG rated in America. I'm not too sure which one got the right thing. Right, I suppose nowadays it would be PG. I mean, it is very light-hearted, but there are some intense, rather scary scenes, like when they're attacked by a scorpion because they've shrunk and everything. So I mean, I do sort of look back and think, well, yeah, the U rating was a lot more hardcore back in the 80s and maybe even 90s. Of course, a lot more other U-rated films back then, which really deserve it. Oh, Black Cauldron's another one. Have you seen Black Cauldron?
Yep, I'm very familiar with that one. I unfortunately didn't see that one till I was like 21. Not because I wasn't allowed to see it, just because we never had it on tape. But yeah, that was unusually tense. But I think Hunchback of Notre Dame takes the cake on something like that, at least for me.
I still haven't seen Hunchback of Notre Dame, so I really cannot tell you. I know I should have watched it since our last podcast, but I haven't got around to it. I suppose I could watch it tonight, but hey ho. But no, I've not watched Hunchback, but I did watch Black Cauldron only 2 years ago, as a matter of fact. Totally, it could shift a bit. We're being a bit light-hearted with that. Was it Oggy character, where his name was? And the
little sprite or goblin.
Yeah, straight back to John Hurt's villain character, which is, I don't know, I always thought it was quite cool and everything. But yeah, I mean, they say like it was the first Disney animated movie to be rated PG by the MPAA, and of course most articles about it will mention the fact that the BBFC did actually just decide to give it a U rating, because they decided that kids could handle it. I mean, I suppose, like I say, it's released the year I was born, so I didn't see this anymore. But make of it what you will, really.
Well, I certainly wouldn't give it a U certificate based on the strength of its imagery. But if I was to use that antecedent, then I would have to go back and say Bambi should be a PG. Snow White should be a PG.
It was.
Aladdin should be a PG.
Maybe Aladdin, but Snow White, I think, originally was going to get A rated when it was first released, but was cut down to a U rating. Then I think it was re-released with a U rating. I am actually going to look this up while we're talking about it, but I think Snow White had a bit of a troublesome history with the BBFC.
But actually, I heard the same thing too. I actually didn't know about that until like a year ago, which caught me by surprise, particularly because everyone considers it a family classic. They always show it at schools and whatnot, but I guess because there's the scenes involving the forest, which is haunted. My mother was scared by that scene when she first saw it. and her biting the apple and to her death, but she's awakened by the prince. Yeah, it's a bit unusual.
Yeah, well, according to the BBFC website, on its first release back in 1938 in this country, it was actually rated A, but all subsequent releases have got away with a U rating. I guess the BBFC they do have a reputation basically back in their history for being remarkably zealous and having knee-jerk reactions to things. So, I mean, yeah, I just kind of thinking that must be the only reason why.
I think it's probably the sort of time and culture standard, which is a little bit before the war, and they probably assumed because they had a weird policy about screams and loudness. They've even done this for some of the Doctor Who films that came out in the 60s, and they said, if you put too much right there, you're going to get yourself an A certificate. That was kind of the rationale, at least at the time. But it is a little bit unusual to see in retrospective. The reason why I did say 1992 Aladdin, I will not talk about the new Aladdin. That makes me vomit.
I wouldn't watch it. Oh, I haven't watched that anyway. I wouldn't give that thing 2 seconds of my life.
Thank you. I absolutely commend you for saying that. Well, I know some people say they were freaked out by the scene with the tiger pyramid thing. Who dares disturb my slumber? None of these scenes ever freaked me out for some reason. I must have been a child made of stone. Because, a lot of the Disney movies that were getting all these U certificates that had surprisingly intense imagery or other even bits of sexual innuendo. Yeah. And then you look at Toy Story, the first one, that was PG. That's the first film I ever saw in cinemas.
Yeah, that was G-rated stateside.
And it's a PG certificate because of dangerous and imitable behavior. Because explosives.
That's them.
That one still makes my head scratch. I mean, I kind of understood why back then, but in retrospective, it looks a bit unusual when you compare to films like Hercules and Hunchback and Mulan being all used and having a bit more objectionable material than Toy Story 1.
They didn't like imitable techniques or actions back then. As I mentioned earlier, I mean, they could, like I say, they got a dickish history of that sort of stuff. I mean, headbutts, air claps, but yeah, for kids playing with playing with explosives or fireworks, they're just gonna freak out.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I have just looked up the Snow White film on IMDb and looked at under alternate versions. It was passed with an uncut A in 38. They re-released it in 1954, and for a U rating, they had to make a series of cuts. It was cut. And then just bear with me. It wasn't. Then again, it wasn't until 1987 when it was finally passed uncut at U. I think a lot of it was just to get rid of a lot of the more, supposedly frightening things, like doing the forest sequences and everything, the Queen's transformation, or the sight of a skeleton in the poisoned apple sequence. Oh God, how ridiculous they were! But that's how the BBFC saw it. So like that is.
Yeah, I'm still trying to scratch my head around that, considering it's such a family classic. Everyone sort of knows what it is. I'm home, and off the way we go. I hope they don't sue me for singing this song.
I really don't think they're going to do that, dude. I mean, but we're talking about cuts. Like we mentioned Black Cauldron earlier, and yeah, it was PG stateside. Apparently, they had some footage removed to avoid a PG-13 rating.
And then they must have gone for like Ralph Bakshi territory as far as like disturbing imagery is concerned.
I think there's a few. I think it was some melting bodies or some sort of decaying skeletons that are being seen that would have pushed it into PG-13 territory. The only thing that goes through my mind is if BBFC saw that, would they have still retained the U rating, or they bumped up to a PG? Because about the time, and especially under Furman, we've mentioned this before, and it bears repeating that he was ridiculously lenient on animation, considering his reputation of an overzealous censor, and a reputation that was well deserved, by the way. He could really let a lot go at animation, couldn't he?
Absolutely. I mean, Princess Mononoke, which at one time was a Disney release via Miramax, that was a PG, and that got away with murder, actual literal murder, with decapitations and bleeding, and a whole lot of shocking imagery that you would not see in a PG film or even a 12 film by today's
Well,
standards.
maybe a 12 film. That's what I don't know. I mean, I think an animated 12 film could probably get away with the first bit. I saw Promare recently. That could have gone onto our anime thing, but yeah, Promare, the anime film, which is 12A rated, and that had some violent imagery in it. Not gonna lie.
Because when I first saw Princess Mononoke, for anyone who's curious, it's not Disney who distributes it anymore. If you live in the States, it's by G Kids, and in Britain, it's by Studio Canal Optimal Releasing. Yeah.
It's on Netflix anyway, so who gives a shit?
Well, just because I think people are probably wondering, are you not talking about Disney? Well, Disney. Well, that's not the problem there. But yeah, that one is pretty shocking. When I saw Demon Slayer, that was a 15 certificate. I thought, oh, I don't see how it's quite that different from Mononoke. That's kind of what I was thinking from my head, because Demon Slayer was 15, and that done actually quite well. But I thought it was just probably like 1 or 2 inches more violent than Mononoke, but probably not too far off. I don't know. My mind's a bit warped on that regard, but it's definitely not Elfen Lied or Urotsukidoji.
What was the second one you said?
Urotsukidoji.
Oh, do you mean
the other thing?
Yeah, okay, we won't get into that. I mean, if you want to talk about how lenient filming was animation, we need to look at Watership Down. But that's not a Disney one, so we will scratch that for the time being.
Well, if you are talking about Disney on its more sort of edgier edge, yeah, everyone likes talking about Black Cauldron or Hunchback. But what about Roger Rabbit? That was from Touchstone. I know that one has a bit of a reputation for having a bit of sexual innuendos and also some weird cartoon violence where a shoe gets dumped into acid and there's blood on Judge Doom's hands. And quite a bit of swearing. I'm actually fine with PG animations like that. They should bring that back again. They did that with Bob's Burgers and Paranorman and Simpsons movie, but they don't do that anymore.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, let's not forget Simpsons movie and Bob's Burgers are both PG-13 stateside. Of course, Roger Rabbit was actually PG, like it was over here stateside. So I mean, it's like yeah, well, Doug Walker basically said it, the nostalgia critic. He said it was basically a good example of a classic 80s PG.
That's pretty accurate there. Yeah. It had an element of a danger to it that you probably don't see in a lot of anime films nowadays, let alone a lot of Disney's, unless you consider like the 12A PG-13 Drek that is Guardians of the Galaxy or Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, and Black Panther and stuff.
Well, I like the MCU films. Some are better than others and everything. I have to admit, we can talk about Doctor Strange, can't we? Because it's Disney, so yeah, cool. Because I did see that.
As owned by them, you can talk. You can even talk about Touchstone and Miramax and Hulu or Star.
Well, I'll keep that in mind. Anyway, because I did see what the fuck was I talking about? Yeah, I did see Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and I'd heard originally that the BBFC had rated 2 of its trailers 15, and of course some people on Twitter were fretting that, like Batman and Morbius this year, it would also get a 15 rating, to which I was thinking, it won't. I mean, apart from anything else, it's a Marvel movie. How scary can it be? The BBFC did rate it 12, so I was like, yeah, come on, they're bound to do that. Saw the damn thing, was like, oh shit, this is actually a lot more scary than you'd give it might actually think it was. Without giving too much away, I don't want to get into spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it. Although it's been out for a while, so if you wanted to see it, you should have seen it by now. There were scenes in it. Have you seen it, by the way?
I'm on superhero sabbatical since Suicide Squad last year. So unless it's one like a nostalgia type of title like Mask or Incredibles, count me out.
Okay, well, you're missing out, but all right. But there were some bits that actually reminded me of Brightburn.
Oh yeah, that James Gunn wrote it. Yeah, that one's pretty gruesome.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't as gruesome as like Brightburn. There were just some bits where it's the fear factor, its sense of terror, where we were like God, this is intense and everything. And there were some violent scenes. I thought, whoa, this is a bit more violent than I'd really put the MCU at, because a lot of violence in the MCU, while there's a lot of death on scene, it's so ridiculous looking and so sort of like unrealistic. It's just hard to take seriously. I mean, I was watching Moon Knight not quite recently, and as typically as like in Black Panther, whenever like someone's actually slicing at a human character with a bladed weapon, it's like no blood scene. They just drop to the floor, and it's like, did you even bloody hit him? I didn't even register contact. It seemed like you just brushed him with it, and he just fell over. You couldn't tell if he's dead or stunned. But no, in this one, you actually did see a bit of injury detail in Doctor Strange. So I was thinking to myself, well, fair play to the BBFC. They can have some balls sometimes if they're willing to pass this at 12A. Then on a podcast I listened to where they were comparing this to Morbius and the Batman, they did say the only reason why it got away was because of the established universe and the established characters had helped reduce the overall impact of the horror scenes.
That's kind of why I thought behind why they gave it a 12A, because to me it sounds more edgier than Morbius, which is a 15, or perhaps Venom, the first Venom. But
well, to be fair,
I don't know.
Venom didn't deserve its 15. Venom 2 I can sort of get around because there's a lot of scenes in the I don't know what to call it. I don't want to say nut house, it's not very politically correct, but in the insane asylums, that's it. And there's this execution scene, which I think, okay, the sense of terror is a bit intense there, but not in fucking Venom. I mean, the whole jokey vibe between Venom and Eddie throughout the whole film really took the edge off any sense of terror.
Well, that's what I thought about it too. You know, it was so comedic. One has to wonder, oh, come. Yeah, I absolutely get what you mean. I probably will see the scenes from Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness in question on YouTube when it does get its Disney Plus release. Just kind of out of curiosity of what all the fuss is about.
I think it's on there now, to be honest, if you want to. But to be fair, as a film, it's okay-ish. I was a bit of I didn't think it was all that great, especially because of previous Doctor Strange, and oh god, the jokes landed flat. I mean, no one in the cinema was laughing at all. It's like usually in most of these MCU films, whenever there's like a quip or a comedic bit, everyone's just pissing themselves laughing. But this, oh god, they just not a single titter. But
it's probably because it may be a bit dark for them. They usually used to sort of light-hearted goofball antics of Guardians of the Galaxy or Thor. Trust me, when Thor: Love and Thunder comes out, it'll do much better at the box office than Doctor Strange 2, because it's
it's
silly.
almost made $1 billion so far, Doctor Strange. But I want to see Thor: Love and Thunder, and I hope that gets good ratings because I'm purposely not going to see Jurassic World Dominion because of its poor rating of a tomato meter, and this is the first time I've not seen Jurassic Park film at the cinema, so that's not what we're talking about. So,
well, you're doing the same thing as me. I'm avoiding Lightyear, not because of Rotten Tomatoes, but because it's a pardon the language. It's a raping of my nostalgia. There's already a Buzz Lightyear origin story that exists called Buzz Lightyear Star Command. It came in the early 2000s. The fact that they're trying to reboot it or rehash it with post CG and they replace Tim Allen with Chris Evans means I will not go pay money to see this movie, even though it is the first Toy Story film to be PG since the one that came out in 1996.
Well, I don't. Then in that case, yeah. Don't. I mean, that's fair enough. I wouldn't go see Lightyear, but then again, I was too old for Toy Story when it first came out, so it's a bit of a moot point from my perspective. But yeah, I mean, Venom was no more violent, if not less violent, than The Dark Knight. It's definitely not as bad as that new Batman film that came out, which was really good. But I could sort of see why the BBFC rated it 15, and I think the MPAA should have rated it R because it was too bloody scary.
I heard it has this is Warner Brothers DC, but it's got a sort of vibe that's similar to something like Saw or Seven. Well, Batman's certainly a much darker film, as is Doctor Strange 2. I've even heard some people complain about Avengers Endgame, because I remember seeing that, and that had a decapitation, and a scene, where they're going to sort of martial arts sword fight, and you actually see some blood on a guy's neck. Maybe this is just me, but I was caught surprised by those bits of violence in a 12 film that's aimed at that mass of an audience. When you compare it to something like Ant-Man 2, which is like a PG film, but it's not PG. But yeah, Ant-Man 2 is very mild.
Got a bit more swearing than you'd probably let in a PG nowadays, though. I mean, I don't know. I think you might be limited how many times you can say shit in a PG. Then I'm just spitballing. I got no fucking idea.
Well, they've got a sort of cap on frequent mild language. If it's aggressively used or too frequent, they draw the line. But when you look at all these old school PG movies like Men in Black and stuff, they got away with so much uses of a mild, or what I would consider moderate profanities, because I don't think shit's that mild of a word. It's certainly much stronger than crap or ass.
Yeah, I mean, F. I didn't know if I knew that quite as much when I was a kid, but yeah, I mean, at least it's considered to be much stronger than those sort of words. I mean, we discussed in our previous podcast, which you won't be able to hear me saying because the audio I was using wasn't well recorded, but nonetheless. Yeah.
Well, we apologize to the audience out there for any problems. There was an emergency at the house, but thankfully this will be remedied this time. Go on to the facets of Disney and Marvel, but I know Pixar has had a few demons in its closet. Incredibles, I'm still trying to get my head around why that was a U certificate film, at least the first film. Because when I first saw it, it was unusually violent and intense.
I have only watched it once. I watched it 2 years ago when I first got Disney Plus. Things are, how well can I actually remember what actually happened? So I don't know. I mean, am I surprised it had a U rating? I mean, probably not. I mean, and again, the overall goofy sort of appearance of the film kind of probably offset a lot of the a lot of any sort of violence or any sort of terror or anything that you'd think might put it into a PG rating, but I don't. Well, from what I remember, I think maybe you was okay. I mean, I know it's PG stateside, but what even gets a G rating nowadays?
Paw Patrol, the movie. Toy Story 3 and Snoopy and Charlie Brown. But that's just me being funny there. But yeah, I'm sorry to say to everyone, but the G rating is dead. DEAD.
The U rating isn't faring much better.
Well, at least there's a bit of a home for it. I mean, you had Frozen 2 and Space Jam 2. They got used.
Yeah, I was going to get on to
yeah, it's a bit of a dying breed there. I know Frozen, the first one was PG. I thought, what?
Oh, yeah, well, I was going to get on to that.
Go on.
You can't talk about Disney and age ratings without talking about Frozen. It's like, on both sides of the Atlantic, it's a PG rating. I'm just thinking, just why in the ever-loving F has this got a PG rating? There's one throwaway line where I think they mention, a girl mentions a size of a guy's hands and what it might be related to and everything. And it's like, yeah, that's why it's a PG. That's why it's in the same category as we can mention it all: Jurassic Park, Arachnophobia, The Mask, Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's like, ratings mean shit.
Well, ratings are pretty much obsolete when you consider what would be acceptable in one decade may not be acceptable in another. I doubt even a film like Song of the South, they would probably give that bloody 12 because it's viewed as racist or insensitive. Give Dumbo a 15. They gave birth to a nation because they don't like the depictions of the crows being black stereotypes.
Well, they might make that 12. I don't think they have 15. I mean, I know on Disney Plus they'll put a warning to say it has racist stereotypes, and why not? I mean, we may as well mention it to them as stereotypes as long as you're not committing acts of censorship. But you're right, talking about how the G's pretty much gone out. I mean, America has 5 age ratings: G, PG, PG-13, R, and NC-17. But the 2 on the outlier are so are practically dead. It's almost like they've only got 3 PG, PG-13, and R.
I would totally agree with you on that regard. So at least in Britain, our rating system is more varied, but in America, it's sort of no.
It's not that much, though. I mean, we are slowly going that way. I mean, we're becoming slightly as quite homogenized as they are. I remember my mum when she talking about the age ratings of the 60s. It was just U, A, and X, so we just had the 3. But it's like the way I think of it now is like, well, it's kind of going that way, almost like it is that way now. Because again, America is just going to be PG, PG-13, and R, and over here it may as well be PG, 12A, and 15. Because you look at any BBFC annual report for any year, the amount of films given U and 18 are just so few. It's almost like they just don't exist.
Yeah. What was your experience with Disney or Pixar? And you can even say Star Wars and Marvel. I don't care.
Well, I mean,
when you were a child.
Well, I can pick it up. Well, I mean, the first film I went to see in the cinema, to the best of my knowledge, was my dad taking me Fantasia for its 50th anniversary re-release. So, I mean, that was So yeah, that's one of the earliest ones. I mean, of course, I got to see Mickey Mouse. So, what kid doesn't like Mickey Mouse?
I had the toy. I played with the tag or label every time.
I mean, for my 9th birthday, I took all my friends to go people I went to school with, to go see Aladdin. For some reason, I think Aladdin took an extra year to come out over here, so it was still showing in cinemas in February of '94, which is when I turned 9. The same year later on, I saw Lion King, which I ended up seeing twice. So there's a bit of experience. Oh yeah, and the year before, I got the Jungle Book for Christmas, because I can't help but compare Jungle Book with Lion King, and video of Peter Pan and everything. So yeah, I mean, in terms of Disney, well, as much as I have with as much as any kid and everything. Seen Dumbo a few times. Don't know if I ever saw Bambi as a kid.
They're probably a little bit freaked out by the death of the deer and the implied gunshot. I know that one still haunts a lot of baby boomers, even to this day. My mother we're between baby boomer and Gen X, and even that film and Snow White still haunts her.
The kid. Everyone says that the death of Bambi's mother is the biggest tearjerker there is and everything. So yeah, I mean, you're completely right. I mean, it is a very soppy film, and I did actually watch it. I think last year on Disney Plus, just to get an idea what it was like, and yeah, it's a cute film.
I would say so too. I would say, I know a lot of people like to talk about the old Disney films that were made pre-1970, but my favorite one would be like 101 Dalmatians from that era.
Yeah, I saw that. They re-released it, I think, briefly, and I saw my dad took me to see that, and that was quite a fun film. And it has the cats.
Oh yes, everybody wants to be a cat.
Right.
Yes. My first experience with Disney was largely through Toy Story. That was the first film I ever saw in cinemas, and the first ever PG. Or maybe that was Hudsucker Proxy. I don't quite remember. But yeah. And then, going on from there, you'd have your Aladdins and Lion Kings, 101 Dalmatians, Oliver and Company, and a few others. And then Hercules, I really like that one. That one actually is quite violent for a use certificate. I remember that scene with the snake heads being unusually intense. But I loved every bit of it because it's so action-packed and so on and so forth. I know a lot of people like to say, oh, Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast. I never connected with those because I'm not female.
Well, yeah, they are more of a can appeal more to the female girls than they are to boys. Yeah, I mean, Aladdin was probably more appeal to boys, although I could get schmaltzy at times. But I think The Lion King had a bit more generic appeal and everything. Obviously, Aladdin's was enjoyable just for Robin Williams' performance as Genie. When I saw that at the cinema with all my friends, my classmates at school, yeah, we were all just pissing ourselves laughing, and it was just hilarious.
I think the late great Robin Williams was definitely the best thing about that movie with his weird non sequitur antics and shape shifting ways.
But yeah, I just remembered another Disney film, a live action Disney film I saw when I was a kid. We went to see it at school. Homeward Bound.
Is that the one with the dogs? It's a little
the
like
two dogs and a cat.
A little like Air Bud or Canine. I haven't seen that in ages.
Yeah, it is like that. I haven't seen Air Bud, but yeah, it is more always where we use animal actors and everything, and of course, it is quite funny and everything. Obviously, it gets the tears streaming a little bit where towards the end and everything, which makes you have to go, no, I'm not crying, you're crying.
Oh, you shouldn't have seen me when I saw Toy Story 3 or Oliver and Company again with my mother. I was bawling like a bitch. I was ashamed, and my mate saw me crying doing Toy Story 4 and 3, doing the bits where Andy, is shown with his toys. It was too much for me because it reminded me of a simpler time in my life. I didn't have to worry about rent and student loans and employment. But that's another story. I'm trying to be a real man here.
Oh, don't worry. We all harken back to our more innocent times before the weight of the world crush our spirits.
Exactly, and before politics corrupted our minds and whatnot. But
I don't want to. Yeah.
I know you're talking about live action Disney. When I think of that, I think of My Favorite Martian, Inspector Gadget, George of the Jungle, Watch Out for That Tree, and Cool Runnings. What was it?
Yes, seen 2 of those 4. I saw Inspector Gadget at the cinema, so that was that was reasonably fun. I mean, I thought it was quite fun. I don't know if I really shouldn't have shown Dr. Claw's face, but well, hell, maybe they did. So I mean,
I guess they're trying to make it un-Canadian by trying to make it more American and pizzazz and funny by showing the villain and whatnot. I liked Inspector Gadget because it's a Québécois work. And, I like French things. But
yeah, I remember it's kind of. Yeah, I remember they tell me that Inspector Gadget was French and everything. Oh yeah, I mean it was. That was yeah, it was always quite good fun. It had a very catchy theme tune and everything, and I just loved watching it used to love watching it as a kid. But,
allez, gadget, go, gadgetals. He always looks like Adrian Brody for some reason. Maybe that's just me. He's got the long nose and the dark hair. He's hilarious. That's probably why it's popular in France and, French-speaking Canada. But getting off topic there, but my favorite live-action Disney film probably would be like My Favorite Martian or Cool Runnings. I remember seeing My Favorite Martian years ago. It was on Sky Box Office, and I always thought, yeah, that was a bit racy than most Disney films I remember because it had Liz Hurley from Austin Powers, National Man of Mystery, and then Bedazzled. And she was always being this sort of bombshell being flirted on, which wouldn't work in a Me Too environment nowadays. And there was also brief nudity, which you wouldn't see in a Disney movie at all nowadays, at least live action bums.
I said, well, it is very like I say, if it was done in a particularly comedic manner and it wasn't done in overwhelming sexually, they probably would have let a lot go. I mean, like I say, I never saw it or anything, so I didn't. So I don't know. It wasn't something that really felt like it would actually attract my. It would actually sort of appeal to me or anything. So yeah. So no, I've never seen my favorite Martian, nor have I. Didn't see it at the time, and I still didn't see it now. I
know another one I really like is Holes. I saw that a little later in my life, but I think that's one of the most unusual Disney films. It's a PG, but it's actually uses its PG to its advantage. This is a movie that's essentially about racism, casteism, youth imprisonment, and isolation. Something you would not see in a typical family film, at least nowadays. It's like something you see of Grange Hill, but America. It's like Shawshank Redemption for young teenagers. I don't know if you're familiar with Holes. You probably were a little too old when that film came out, but that movie kind of haunts me. I would certainly, if I was working at a hostel or a youth offenders institute, I would show them this type of movie to show them you don't want to end up like these kids. Please.
I don't think I'd even heard of it, to be honest.
It came and gone. I remember seeing it at Kids Club, which was a little unusual considering how dark it got, the subject matter. And I remember either crying or being a bit shocked by some of the social issues it was talking about. This was a Disney movie, mind you, and dealt with a child who was kind of disowned because he was descended by interracial couple who was targeted by the KKK, and that one was a bit too close to the needle at places. But I love that movie. But yes, did I interrupt you about any other?
I don't. Well, to be honest, I don't actually think so. But I've just suddenly had one other idea of a Disney film that I was aware of for the time being, even though I was way too old for it. Agent Cody Banks.
Oh yeah, I remember when that was a 12A back in England, but it got a PG in America.
Well, not just that, but that's what I was actually going to get to. Yeah, because another film that came out in the 2000s that was released by Disney, The Pacifier.
Oh yeah, Musclehead Vin Diesel. I hate that actor. He annoys me. But
I don't think too much of him. But anyway, yeah, PG, uncut PG in America was cut for its PG over here because there was a use of the word spaz, which of course would have pushed it into 12A. So it's like, okay, there's just. I suppose I can understand what they're going at. They don't really want to encourage too many ableist words and everything. It just seemed a bit, it's a bit silly at times.
Yeah, I've even noticed that word being uttered in animations that you watch on Cartoon Network, like Johnny Bravo and Dexter's Lab. I never picked up on it. There was a slur against people with like Down syndrome or whatnot. But yeah, I was quite surprised by that. They even cut it out on like Ice Age 3 or 4, which caught me by surprise because spaz in America doesn't really mean anything. It's like saying fanny. No one knows what it means in America, but in Britain, it's certainly much more offensive. And then Ian Dury made that one song called Spasticus Autisticus. I actually like that tune, but yeah, that got shat on by the BBC. They didn't want to air it when that song came out. But
like I say, over here, spaz does have there's the ableist meaning, whereas in America it doesn't. But then it's like if we say fag over here, of course we mean cigarette, but of course in America that's going to mean something entirely different.
Exactly.
But to be honest, I don't think it would rub the censors the wrong way per se, because I think they might understand that. They hopefully would understand they're referring to it as a cigarette.
But yeah, well, actually, the big elephant in the room, Disney Plus. I know
we'll get onto that.
The BBFC algorithm, they tend to use their own sort of rating system in of itself, which I think is a bit dodgy, because they've even permitted certain episodes of Simpsons, which I would not deem appropriate for younger viewers, but they have it on there. And then Moon Knight, I think that's a 16 plus. How exactly is 16 a family rating? That's teenage. That's just a year above 15, mind you.
Well, it's not just the family stuff now, because ever since they bought out Fox and I can't remember what else, they've pretty much brought in all those classic R-rated using Americanism, action movies like there's Commando, there's Die Hard, there's Con Air. Oh god, there's all of them really.
No, you're absolutely right. And some of the more sort of mature stuff that Touchstone was offering, like Pretty Woman and whatnot. In retrospective, it's a little bit unusual because in my time in the States, Disney Plus is separated between its family division and then more the old stuff called Hulu. In Britain, we have Star. Star pretty much covers the adult-oriented stuff that Disney owns the shares of.
Pretty much, yeah.
I would prefer when I see promos for stuff like Pam and Tommy, the miniseries, or Y, The Last Man, not use the Disney Plus moniker or logo and just say it's available on Star. Because then that doesn't confuse parents and anger parents. They're even getting complaints right now about having Punisher and Daredevil and Jessica Jones on the American, or maybe even the North American feed for Disney Plus, which we don't quite understand. Because I think some of those episodes are 18 for Daredevil and Punisher, and Jessica Jones has a lot of sex.
Jessica Jones is 15. Luke Cage is 15. Daredevil was season 1 and 3 are both 15s, but season 2 is 18s. It gets a little bit violent. Punisher is 18. Everything revolving to Punisher is always an 18 rated. And I think Iron Fist was also 18 rated as well. I'm not entirely sure.
It's probably because of a violent martial arts tactic or something. Maybe there's a little too much blood. But yeah, I'm surprised you're not getting the kind of complaints about that. I thought there was going to be people saying, "Oh, I'm not watching Disney Plus as a result." I think if they want to be smart about it, at least in North America, they should just put that shit on Hulu just to save the trouble. And certain episodes of Simpsons ought to be on Hulu, like the one where Sacha Bob beats the shit and kills Bart.
I don't know. No, but what I do know is that basically I assume you've got this. You've got the sort of the parental lock thing you have on Disney Plus now, where you have to put in the passcode the 4-digit passcode before you can access it now. Ever since they've brought Star on, so I'm guessing that's why.
Okay, because I was just a little curious about that because I've always talked to my mates about why that sort of schism exists between Star, aka Hulu, versus Disney Plus and all their other stuff that they have on there. It's a little unusual, I'll say at first. And then also seeing some of the stuff that's on Disney Plus. Like they put a Hamilton on there, and that was the first time I ever heard the F word being used on a Disney production. That caught me by surprise, and I think there's like some documentaries on there from National Geographic. They had quite a bit of bleeped swearing.
Well, that movie Big, with Tom Hanks.
Yeah, the young kid says, "Who the F do you think you are?" Anyway.
Oh no, sorry, that's a 20th Century Fox movie. My mistake.
No, it's Disney now that it's owned by them.
Yeah, it wasn't made by them back in '88, though, is it?
No.
No, but no, of course, in terms of like censorship and Disney and everything, one thing, of course, I can notice because Disney Plus is unlike Netflix, which is like self-applying BBFC ratings and everything to its stuff. That kind of annoyed me. I wish it wouldn't do it. And I think Amazon Prime tries to do that as well, albeit it doesn't really do it to quite the extent. Of course, Disney Plus uses its own rating system, its own algorithm, doesn't really follow the BBFC guidelines to the extent. And of course, I was watching Conan the Barbarian, and there's a scene in there which I think is still cut over here due to a horse fall being somewhat excessive, and which still hasn't been released uncut in this in this country, at least I think so anyway. I was watching it, of course, on Disney Plus, and yeah, it was completely uncut. So, because again, it just doesn't really follow isn't bound by any BBFC rules. So that's just an interesting tidbit to add in.
I certainly learn new stuff every day, because the most I've heard about as far as censorship is concerned on Disney Plus and streaming services like that is Splash, the Tom Hanks movie. They try to remove some of the nudity out of that one, and then I think there was some jokes that were homophobic or a bit transgressive, like from Adventures in Babysitting, that they had to excise out. And then that one Simpsons episode where Michael Jackson is on there, they got rid of that. And I actually have the DVD of that season that has the Jacko episode, but We know what he is about. He's a nonce, so I'm glad they got rid of that.
Yeah, well, we always knew back in the day though that it was like he was a bit of he was a complete kiddie fiddler and everything. And of course, a lot of people are trying around and say, well, we don't know it for sure, and everything. There's no actual evidence or anything. They thought maybe the parents were just trying to falsely accuse him, and he was just basically, spending too many times on kids because he was an overgrown man-child. I mean,
they injected so many drugs on him when he was a child just to make his voice as high pitched. Which also contributed to his vitiligo and the fact that he started looking from a black man to, not to be offensive, he turned into a white woman later in life. And it just was really unusual. But I just have to say that for everyone, because there's a song I've done that's called Remember the Time, one of his tunes, when Jacko was the white woman. And I actually referenced that one particular song and mix in Grace Jones and Jamiroquai and a few other bits of music in there for comic effects. Even though it's not Disney related, I'm sure you could probably get a kick out of it. I'm actually, to be honest with you, to end this podcast in just a little bit, Disney has been quite disappointing to me over the years. Since 2003, they haven't made a good film as far as animation is concerned. I mean, a few live action titles like $1 Million Arm and some of the stuff that they've done on Touchstone, like Wild Hogs. And then a few Marvel films like Black Panther and Ant-Man. But since then, it's just been downhill for them, really, except for some of the Pixar.
I can't say I entirely agree, because if you're going to include the MCU films, I'd say very much the MCU has been almost a successive home run. I mean, sure, Eternals was bad, and there's been a few of other MCU films that weren't that good, like Iron Man 2 and everything. But generally speaking, most of the MCU films have been absolutely just spectacular and everything. And as for the new Star Wars films, the new trilogy, I'd say 2 out of 3 they got pretty damn well. I mean, Rise of Skywalker was a bit pants. Oh, good God, the Pirates of the Caribbean films, I don't have. I mean, it's like the first one is because it's the only good one, and that's really not that good, I don't think. So, yeah, God. I won't see any of those films at the cinema, just like I won't see any Michael Bay Transformers films at the cinema or any live-action Disney remakes at the cinema after seeing Lion King in 2019, because, oh, God, I just thought that was absolute shite.
And thank you, and I commend you for saying that. You just made my day. I haven't even seen those live-action remakes of the Disney films, but someone told me I got to go see Cruella, which I'm still trying to get my head around why that is a 12A. Based on a film, that's a U certificate from the 60s. I was honestly confused by that whole thing.
Oh, pardon me. Sorry, just having a quick yawn. I mean, yeah, I couldn't. I wasn't interested in Cruella. I was never going to go see it. So, I mean, I got nothing to really say on that one. I will say, though, it's not really censorship related. It's more about critical review related. Basically, a lot of people were a lot of DC fans or a lot of old school Star Wars fans were accusing Disney of paying critics to give their films good ratings, such as the MCU films or the Star Wars films, like Force Awakens and Last Jedi. It's like, well, hang on a second. Looking at the Pirates of the Caribbean films and Rise of Skywalker and the Eternals, what, did they just forget to do it that time around because they didn't get good ratings? Rise of Skywalker is the lowest rated Star Wars film, even lower than Phantom Menace, and I don't think it deserves that, but it's a pretty damning, though, if it actually looks worse than any of the prequel trilogy, all of which I think are absolute bollocks.
Well, you just remind me about Phantom Menace. That was the first Star Wars movie I ever saw. I actually have a soft spot for that because Jar Jar Binks is so hilarious. And everyone saying,
really?
Do Jar Jar, do Jar Jar. And then Darth Maul was pretty
Lord.
cool. I know some kids were scared by Darth Maul, but I actually thought he was a badass. Better than Darth fucking Vader.
I thought the fight with Darth Maul was actually quite cool. Most people seem to like that. I mean, obviously, every reason why I'll start again. The elephant in the room that basically everyone hates about Phantom Menace, well, other than all the constant political waffling, was of course Jar Jar Binks. Everyone said he was like completely and utterly annoying comic relief. That's it. Annoying comic relief that just had no place in like Star Wars film. It was just annoying character. Plus, him along with Watto were both complete racial stereotypes.
No, unfortunately, you are correct. I mean, Walter was like some anti-Semitic. Hey, what do you want? You don't give me money. And Jar Jar was supposed to be like Afro-Caribbean or Jamaican.
Yeah. And now Star Wars is owned by Disney, so it's really fitting considering a lot of Disney's old stuff. You know, again, Dumbo and the Crows.